So um, I'm going to mix a few things, the topic and another topic, which is the reason behind a new India is emerging. And I truly believe that what's happening today in the last 3 years specifically is very, very different from what's possibly happened in the entrepreneurial ecosystem in the past 15 years. What's different is scale. What's different is the scale of innovation. What's different is I perhaps do not call it the new startup ecosystem anymore. I call it the startup industry because the scale at which it is happening right now and potentially as we move forward is humongous. This is creating enormous amount of jobs. This is creating enormous amount of impact in the country through the usage of technology, which has never happened before. But a word before that on why this is happening. I would like to quote a Morgan Stanley report where we're looking at numbers. We are talking about GDP growth. Morgan Stanley refers to this as 8 trillion in a 5 to 6 year time frame. Per capita GDP going up. IT services still continues to amaze me and grow to perhaps a $500 billion economy by the year 2000. That's just cash coming into the system. The equity market caps, global exports, we've seen, I know there'll be ups and downs due. The gradient still continues to grow up. And India is expected to be 4.5% of global exports, which is double that of today by the year 2030. Sorry. I think I'll need some help here. Can we get this to the next level? Now, with this background, I believe that in this new economy, there are three elements which are very, very crucial, which are creating enormous amount of economic, and it's also creating impact. These are the three areas of digital, electronics and manufacturing, as well as climate. If you look at these areas, my apologies, these slides are going a little bit faster than I thought they would. Okay, it's back again. But what are these areas today? We did a little bit of research, which is still going on. We're going to release this report next month. The startup economy today is approximately 15,000 angel-funded companies and VC-funded companies. I'm only including that for the moment right now. The revenue of those companies today is around $30 billion. And I believe that this, at a compounded growth rate of 30 to 35%, is likely to reach in 5 years a $200 billion revenue. So this is very new, I presume, to all of us here when a VC talks about revenue and not about valuations. We're talking about a $200 billion economy only on startups. And interestingly, a large part of that could come through exports. Electronics expected to touch $300 billion. India stack, UPI, and all the other associated ONDC, etc. If UPI alone is instead of the 34 countries where UPI wishes to be in the next 5 years, I believe just the top 10 countries in UPI participation will contribute $200 billion worth of revenue to the Indian ecosystem. Software, services, $3 billion from the 200 odd today. And climate. Now, climate does not include solar infrastructure and other infrastructure expenditure or investments, just the digital part of climate, etc. So the total of this, we expect a $1 trillion revenue economy. This is so important and so critical where investments are actually going on in the private world. This is not public markets. Yes, this is a supply chain to public markets. However, what very few people don't know, is that this is a very large opportunity and it's already happening. It's not something about to emerge. So we're talking about a 1 trillion economy, and this economy has grown so far at about 52% CAGR in the last 5 years. It slowed down during COVID times, but during COVID times, we also found that, and this is anecdotal evidence for the industry, that about 70% of our companies grew faster post-COVID than pre-COVID, which we did not expect. They became more efficient, they became international because technology-based solutions do not have geography boundaries. They can go anywhere in the world. So international revenue also started increasing. So if you look at this industry, of the startup alone, there are few changes which are happening, which are very important to note. First, international operations. Startup industries yesterday used to be talking about SaaS companies going international, but today consumer companies have gone international. Lenskart just acquired a $200 billion eyewear company from Japan and now has operations in 15 countries. FirstCry is in 3 countries, Middle East as such. You have smaller companies, apart from SaaS, consumer companies, which are going international. So, with this, our estimate is that about 10% of industry revenue is international today, but we expect this to grow to 25 to 30% again in the next 5 years. And there are 2 reasons why this will happen. One, the top echelon of companies have started raising large pools of capital, and this is to fund international growth through M&A or through organic, and domestic growth through M&A or through organic. So you'll find, up till now, not much of M&A has happened in the country. Actually, very, very few companies have been sold to Indian companies. And that opens up a very, very large market as far as India is concerned. And obviously, this will be supply chain to the IPOs. The second major change, which is very important to note, is that we are talking about now startups scaling to $1 billion revenue each. Our estimate is, in the next 5 years, don't be surprised if there are 20 to 25 startups who will be at $1 billion revenue each. That's a very different world out there. We're talking about 5 to 8,000 crore revenue companies, large, dominant, which never have been there in the market at such scale before. And that's because there are 1 billion people in India who need products and services in a much more efficient manner and in a price point which is only valid for India. If products and services have to succeed, they have to be at a price point which is affordable as far as the country is concerned. I'll touch upon this, why this is so important later on. A lot of people ask me, where do startups invest in or VCs invest in? I say, there are many sectors, but let's call it every tech. Technology has a very important role to play to make existing industries much more efficient, and new industries obviously have to be much more efficient as such. And I think the last trend, which is very, very crucial, is the rise of the Indian investor. So far, 10 to 15% of the capital deployed in India is from Indian investors. In our own case, it's 50%. So I do believe that in the next 5 years, this could go up to 25 to 30%, which is very interesting because Indians investing in the risk asset class in India, in startup ecosystem, at scale has never happened before. And that gives confidence to international investors that, look, there's something which we don't know about, which is happening in the country. So this is about the startup tech ecosystem, which is based on proof points which are there in the industry. I'm just going to wait for my slide to go to the next level. So, effectively, if you see, we are talking about now, Nandan calls it population scale economics. There are 1 billion plus Indians who require very efficient healthcare. It's not available. I was so happy to listen to Dr. Kiran earlier. The micro effect and the impact which is being made. But there are a billion people who require in all sorts of healthcare. How do you get healthcare to a billion plus people? There are a billion people in the country who require loans, lending. There are 1.2 billion people who require insurance. There are 150 million farmers who require efficient agricultural solutions to make agriculture a productive entity. With an average holding of 2 acres, 70% being less than half an acre, right? How do you make that significantly more productive and earning for the farmer? I think technology can solve it, provided it works on my slides. Okay, so effectively what we are talking about is population scale economics, which is there in India. However, the definition of population scale economics has to change a little bit, because right now we have UPI, which is being used by approximately 260 million Indians. Now to reach, and I'll give you an example why this is very important to think about why consumer companies and others are changing right now. Let's say if eyewear is priced at 500 rupees or 600 rupees, and there's a 50% margin on that. And that's being probably bought by 20, 30 million people at any point of time, or 50 million people. Now to reach the next 100 million people, on the assumption that there are 260 million UPI users, is the same pricing going to work, or is it going to be a lower pricing? I think it's going to be low pricing. That will give us market penetration to reach 200 million consumers. But you can't just reduce the price because margins go down. So product engineering, investments in R&D and material science, product design and manufacturing have to come up for products to be reaching 200 million Indians. So companies in the startup ecosystem who have scaled are now starting to think about product engineering, design, R&D, to make sure that such products can be made at high quality in India at a price point which is affordable, value for money. And in our own portfolio, we have 7 factories now, all consumer companies, 7 factories. So a lot of money will be needed for that. So far, startups have been focusing on the front end, the marketing side. To become efficient, you reduce cost of consumer acquisition. To become efficient, you improve distribution. To become efficient, you need marketing, people on the sales side. This is the last 18 months or so, I believe the back end has to start. Supply chain, manufacturing, warehousing. That is so crucial. So this is very interesting because that's where now capital is required. And these will result in, or already resulting in, scale companies which are here to stay. $1 billion, $2 billion, $3 billion company. Next 5 years, you'll find 8,000 to 25,000 crore companies in the startup ecosystem. We have 3 of them in our own portfolio. And the kind of things they're doing is just very different from what used to be the board discussion even 18 months back. So population scale economy based on supply chain, manufacturing, design, R&D, and the front end, including international, is so important. I just want to add one thing. When population scale products are there in the country, they are based on high quality and low price. And I want to give the example of two-wheelers which happened in Africa. 3 companies, Bajaj, TVS, and Hero, have, I think, 60% of the market share in Africa today for two-wheelers. High quality, very good pricing two-wheelers. They've beaten the Chinese. Why? Because they sustained high quality products over a period of time, excellent service. Which also leads me to think that if more Indian companies from India do this, there is no Western company who can meet that price point and that margin point. Which also means that international markets open up, and those international markets where technology products go out in the physical realm, not just the SaaS products, are replacing Western technology products which cannot meet that price point. So I do believe that Indian products with high tech or medium tech will start replacing, in at least emerging markets, if not developed markets, Western products, because those Western products cannot meet that innovating technology solutions. And that's very, very interesting. I met a very interesting entrepreneur in Pune recently, and he runs a foundry. And in the foundry, there is silica. Sand goes in, and out comes silica waste. He's turning that silica waste into bricks. And those bricks are lining roads, and those bricks are lining walls in a much more efficient manner. And that's very interesting because I think industries are now thinking how to turn technology into something much more relevant as such. So, trends, high quality startups. We've seen very high quality startups in the last 3 years. Technology, I was meeting an entrepreneur today who wants to turn waste vegetation into pellets for animals. Permit me to take that example. A company in Pune who wants to replace chemical colors with colors based out of bacteria, applied stress, and they've already taken 5 such colors to the global markets. They want to replace chemical colors, which is very, very tough and very pollution oriented to the industry. So, domestic market dominance, high tech, very innovative, agile, and M&A. The other 3 trends which are very, very crucial, they're happening today. And they're not happening in small instances, they're happening in big instances overall. If you look at one of the things which is very important is that there's talk of a winter, a funding winter. Yes, investors have become extremely careful in investing because there have been 3 events. There is the COVID event which has taken place, there is the war, and then there is supply chain disruption. But money which has gone into startups this year, except for last year which was about 60 billion, this year has already crossed 38 to 40 billion, which is the similar number to a year before, 2020. So while there may be disruptions on a quarterly or annual basis, trending used to be at 15 degrees, it's now at 35 degrees. And I'll prove that as we move forward. I won't repeat this opportunity, but fundamentally, that gives huge opportunities in the market space for global and Indian investors to seriously look at this, because this did not exist even 18 months back or 24 months back. And there are reasons outlined here why this is important and why this is happening. I just want to spend a little bit of time on the risk asset class opportunity. If you look at the US, as a percentage of GDP, US in 2020 of risk investments in the US was 3.87, about 4%. India is at 2.58%. 2.58% in 2021 was approximately $40 billion. If I just do a mathematics of $4 billion, 4%, India has to absorb, if it has to reach that level, double the risk asset class investments of today. Today is about 40 again. And whether it will do that or not will depend on a lot of factors as such. I believe one of those factors will be the participation of rupee capital, because rupee capital understands India in a very nice manner, because most of that rupee capital has built India so far already. So I do believe that Indian risk asset class investing will grow from 2.5% to a number close to 4% in the next 5 to 7 years. And we'll wait to see how that happens. But this is very, very crucial because we are undercapitalized in new economy industry at this moment, at 40 billion a year. Why is this going to happen? We believe exits are happening. And exits which have happened in the last 5 years last 5 years investments have been about $150 billion. We believe that's going to grow to $350 billion in the next 5 to 6 years. Exits, which is the holy grail for all investors, apart from creating impact, have been about 100 in the last 5, 6 years. that should cross on a 1:1 basis. The lag will not be more than 15 to 20%. So if that is the case, then performance matters. I think there are emerging managers who are performing. There are a lot of people who are not performing, a lot of downside, risks, etc. But firms have the capability to assess that risk overall. And this is the India which is creating impact right now. If you look at just the opportunity and linking it to how useful it is to the economy, now the usefulness comes from one very simple factor, and then, since we don't have industry data, permit me to take our own data. Our companies now have impacted 3.5 million farmers. Our companies have impacted today 3.5 million farmers in soil management, disease management, in water management, in crop productivity being increased, because that's what a company in agri-tech does. And if they start measuring it more properly, it emerges a strategy to become much more efficient. Our companies have reached over 100,000 SMEs to which lending is done. Lending and insurance put together just in our own companies is to the tune of $15 billion. I never thought it would reach that scale. So the list can go on and on. The significant new economy, which has emerged at about $35 billion in startups and $1 trillion revenue economy in 5 years from now, is the holy grail for the new economy, which is creating huge impact in the market on benefits to society and benefits to business, apart from outstanding returns and lifting people above poverty level in many, many ways, apart from creating enormous wealth. Thank you very much.